Okay, we have Andy on our podcast today. Super excited to be speaking with him. He's got a 15 plus year track record in sales ops and in revenue ops. So, really excited to kind of see how both of those sides of things have played into what he's seen with best practices, probably some nightmare situations with the CRM setups that he's seen over the years. And so, specifically today, we're going to be talking with Andy, trying to get across with the sales ops perspective. More importantly, that might roll up into some forecasting and getting user adoption and how we clean up data and get sales reps to actually want to use something like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. So really excited to get into that conversation with Andy today. Andy, do you actually want to take some time to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. So thanks for having me on, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I love doing stuff like this. It's even though it's quite a small space, I guess, or a growing space like the RevOps or what is now being called go-to-market engineering. It's always great to speak to other people in this area and especially things that I'm like super passionate about that other people like the average Joe on the street would have like zero clue what you're talking about or zero interest for that matter. But yeah, so I'm Andy Smidmore. I am based out of London. As you mentioned, I've had it's about 14, 15 years now in this crazy ops world that I've seen sort of transform over different periods of those 15 years. I actually started out in with a finance and bookkeeping background, straight from college and straight into London in a finance and accounting and bookkeeping role. And I did that for a fair few years and it just wasn't really my thing. Like I was okay at it. I found it pretty boring. I'm sure there's some great accountants out there, but it wasn't my bag. And yeah, I sort of fell into this ops world. I was working for a West Coast reinsurance company headquartered out in the Bay Area, and I was in the London office, and I'd been there for like 3 or 4 years. And I was like pretty good friends with a guy in there, and he was actually doing ops. He wanted to make the jump into the field and go sell the software. And I was actually looking to move on because I just didn't really sort of know where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do if I wanted to stay in accounting. And he was like, listen, you'll be perfect for this role. Like you'll really enjoy it. And I love the company. I love the people and I love the culture there and the atmosphere and, great people. A lot of them actually came to my wedding all those years ago. And so I didn't really know anything about ops. This was when the whole sales ops was coming around about that time. It was really sort of making a name for itself and I didn't really know anything. And I took the leap and I didn't know anything. I stepped in thinking there was going to be some sort of like instruction manual or playbook and it turns out there isn't and there still really isn't because of how fast things move. But I just got into it and I was there. I stayed in that role at that company for about 1.5 years. I just found that I had like this passion for building out structure and process and policy and, shortening business flow and connecting the dots and the cross-functional teams across the business and really seeing it sort of move the needle and the value it added. And I just sort of loved it and become really sort of quite consumed with a lot of the areas. And I was learning on the go. So I was trying to read all the material I could look at. I was trying to find everything on the internet and follow the very limited amount of people that were sort of visible at that time. And sort of, try and understand and absorb as much info as possible. And then from there, I was just like full in at that point with, especially like US West Coast tech companies where when that bubble was like sort of kicking off. And, I've sort of typically stayed in aggressive early stage US startups that are sort of coming to the front with like all these amazing like products and technology. And, I just sort of found that was super exciting, like so exciting. And, that's what you want in any role anyway. You want to be learning and you want to be enjoying what you're doing, but also loving what you're doing and being part of that journey. And I just sort of like found that was my tribe. Like that was like, that was what I sort of was good at and what I enjoyed doing. And and that's brought me to where I am today. And there's been things over the years, I think in ops, there's always going to be parts of the role that you might not necessarily like doing, but it just comes with the territory. You just have to do it. But it won't be your favorite thing. And then there's things that I really sort of double down on. Like, I got really passionate about sales forecasting. And then seeing how that's transformed over the years with all the new tooling and technology that's come along, and the new, the different sales leaders, like amazing sales leaders that I've worked with over the years, and their approach to it. And so then, like, I find that I've become a bit of an SME in that particular area. And like, this bit I'm good at, but I don't really like doing. So it's been a real learning curve, and we're going through it all again now, right? Like with the rise of AI, like it's insane. Like the speed of transformation that I've paid attention to over the past 12 months. We're sort of in that exciting period again. So I feel like I'm sort of back to day one in some respects. And, not that you have to shelve everything that you've sort of built up all that tribal knowledge, but
Yeah.
everything that's coming is going to be a learning curve for a lot of people in ops.
Yeah. Yeah, you said a lot of fun stuff there too. I connect on the piece where you said you felt like it was your tribe. I got lucky as well when I started off my career to there's a small hub of tech companies out where I live here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And they've tried to rip off the name from California as well. Instead of Silicon Valley, they try to call it Silicon Slopes, since we're kind of known for all the skiing and
Yeah.
snowboarding. And so there's a little pocket of tech companies I got introduced to. And I think you nailed it with that aggressive, fast paced, growing. You kind of wear a bunch of hats, but there's so much to do. And I don't know, it just kind of creates this environment where it's like really fun to work there. And you see stuff pay off fairly quickly because they're growing rapidly. And also on the ops side too, like when a lot of these times being in the Salesforce world, we would roll up to RevOps or sales ops or ops in general. And it was kind of cool to always see that like what I was working on, you'd get to see kind of that instant payout too, which was always fun. So unlike something maybe where, marketing for an example, I know you do see a payoff, but sometimes those can be a little bit more longer term things that you're trying to look for to see how brand has influenced something or campaign has influenced a decision. It's sometimes not always black and white to see that. And so being a part of RevOps, sales ops, you're designing all this stuff, it's growing so quick. And then on top of that, you're like, everything I'm doing, I just feel like everything I touch turns to gold for this company, and it's growing and it makes it fun to work there with them. So
Yeah, I
definitely,
would agree 100%. I think there's another side to it as well, though. Like, I can't say that I've never been in one of these companies where you sort of tasked with doing something one week, but then give it 4 weeks later and it gets scrapped, right? And you've got to be comfortable with that. But that's the way those companies move, and that's the sort of wave that I like to ride. And I sort of buzz off that, and I don't take it personally, or I don't sort of like throw my head back and put my head in my hands and think, oh, I've just spent 4 weeks working on this and they've scratched. That's just the way it is in these types of companies. And I think you've got to be good with that. So there's always that, like the quick wins like you're talking about, and the low hanging fruit where you really sort of see the value come through pretty quickly in sales ops specifically. But there's the other side of it as well, where, you can see something get shelved after you've sort of dedicated so many man hours and blood, sweat and tears into something, really looking forward to seeing it get off the ground. And then they're like, what are you talking about? Like, we've changed our plans. We're changing direction. We're not doing that anymore. You've got to be good with that.
that is true. And I think that comes with some of the leadership changes too when you're growing quickly. Sometimes you have that opportunity if you get in early, at least it's been my experience, where maybe you weren't always cut out and you can either kind of ride that ladder all the way to the top and get into a really awesome title from being there early. And then sometimes it's the opposite that I've seen over the years, where you were the right person for that job right when we started. But now that we are, instead of 20, we're now 150, there's going to be a leadership change. And to your point, sometimes that always comes with a
Yeah.
different strategy. Stuff gets shelved. Stuff isn't a priority like it used to be. So that is a good call out too. One thing I wanted to ask you is kind of kick this off too was, since you've seen a lot of different environments, you worked for several different companies at this point. When you first get introduced to one of these tech startups and you go in and you have your sales ops hat on, what is it that you see inside their CRM that would kind of make you feel like a little bit cringeworthy about, oh man, this is going to be a super painful adoption process for our sales team because I see X? Is there something that stands out to you that you're looking for?
I mean, so the thing that stands out for me, but it's never a surprise for me. And actually, like, I do this to myself every time. Like, I'll start a new role and I'll go into a company and I walk in with these like rose tinted glasses on, like, oh, it's going to be, I'm going to get into the CRM or whatever sales tooling they're using. And it's going to be like, it's going to be great. It's going to be fine. Like, everything's going to, and I do this I don't know why, because when I look back, I think every single company that I've been in has like some data hygiene problem, right? Or, the governance around data and issues around dupes and, missing key fields and every company. So I would say like, I see that every single time, even though I sort of kid myself thinking, oh, it's going to be like amazing. And, you know, it's never like that. I would say that's probably like the one thing that does sort of stick with me in, because I can think back across the companies I've been at right here and now and remember that first time that I jumped into their CRM and thinking, wow, like, you've got like millions of records or hundreds of thousands of records and there's missing fields and there's dupes and, there's like misaligned account hierarchy and how am I supposed to like do X, Y, Z? So I see that every single time. I think to your point, there's probably a couple of issues like looking at a CRM when you join on day one that for me specific, like in my own opinion, I always look at how the tool's being used across the business, like who's using it cross-functionally and within sales. And when I say how it's being used, like, is it just being used as a CRM database? Is it being used for pipeline management? Is it being, used for forecasting only, or just someone puts a deal record in and then just closes it out? Like you see it join stage one, and then 3 days later you see it move to close one, and it's missed out this whole chunk. So I sort of try and look at like how it's been used like that by different people. I think one of the other things I look at is the general adoption rate across the business. I think that is quite a good measure to how, if you were to walk in on day one and you looked at what the adoption rate looks like, or if you've had a conversation like the water cooler conversation with a rep and they're like, yeah, like I don't really use like the CRM, or, I use Google Sheets, or I think that gives a pretty good indication looking at the percentage adoption rate across the business in how trusted it is. And then immediately, if that flags to me immediately, it's almost like opening Pandora's box, right? Because there's going to be like big issues in the tool. There's going to be trust issues. There's going to be bad data. There's going to be bad governance around it, or even bad leadership, right? Like, where they're not enforcing it or enabling it, like the reps to use the tool. So I think there's a fair few things that you can sort of take away from it, looking at it. If you was to step in on day one, they'd probably be like the key ones for me.
I like that. And that kind of makes me feel a little more reassured too, because I was thinking like, what's my answer to this same question? I would probably say something similar. My head was going like alignment and kind of how they think about the tool. Because to your point, every business for myself as well, my experience has been the same. Every company you get into is going to have duplicates. They're going to have kind of tech debt in general is what we'll call it, which is just stuff that kind of gets outdated as you grow and it has to be fixed and it's there. But there's some businesses that aren't using Salesforce that maybe we can get into, that they're ready to buy. They're almost ready to buy it. They want to use us, and they'll have much better of a headspace about how they're going to use that tool and how it's going to be a single source of truth, or how it's going to help them measure and make business decisions together because they can see everything, the patterns better. And then there's some businesses that we'll get into and it's the reverse. They've been using it for several years. They have it as their CRM, but then the attitude around it, like you said, is fairly negative. It's something that they feel almost like they were forced to buy. And so, okay, it's here. I don't really want to use it. I don't like it. I don't love the UI. The business doesn't like it. And I feel like that kind of spreads throughout the business. And so because of that, you'll run into a lot more issues like you were calling out as well. Like I liked how you said Pandora's box. You open up Pandora's box a little bit and you kind of know if you're having those conversations with leadership right off the bat, that it's likely these people are also not going to be wanting to buy into how this helps your business in the long run. So you're at 100 employees right now. What does this look like when you try to become an enterprise business? Like, how are you going to run this at 5,000 people if the attitude remains the same, which is like, we hate it. We don't want to invest in it. We always want it cheaper. We're upset that there's rate raises. So I think it has a lot to do, at least my experience as well, has been around trying to unlock like accepting what it is. It's an investment. We want to use it as a source of truth. It will help our business grow if we look at it that way and use it as the tool it is, versus a burden and there's no other way to do this, So
I think you just made a really good point, and actually it's just sort of triggered something for me. I think for any CRM purchase of any company of any scale,
yeah,
if you look straight out the gate, it really does sort of come down to how it was sold in the first place, but not just from the seller, whatever CRM company it is, but also how it was purchased by the buying team at the customer side, right? And how that then gets how that gets like built out and enabled. Because if if it's going to be like a quick sell, and to your point, like exactly what you said, like they're not talking about what it can do for your business in future, and really understanding what the buying journey looks like for the customer. And then you've got similar actions on the company team where they just need a CRM, just to say they've got an SFDC or to say they've got a HubSpot or whatever, to roll it out to the company to say, check, like, we've done our thing, and this is what we've got. Then that sort of sets the tone to how that's then going to be received across the rest of the business going forward. I mean, I know you get leadership changes and so on, and that opens up other, talking points as well around, you're going to get someone coming to the business that's a big SFDC fan. You're going to get someone that comes into the business that's not an SFDC fan, and those people carry weight. And then, you go off in different directions from that. I really do think that it does really come down to how it was sold and how it was purchased in the first place. If you've got the original team later down the line, that is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's a good follow-up point to it. And even when you're in that buying situation too, sometimes the leadership you have in place or the people that you send to those calls also matters. We'll see we don't typically work outside of like the tech niche, but there are a few here and there that we'll work with that are maybe like a service business. And I feel like sometimes those ones in particular, because tech to them is it's a different approach than a tech business, right? Tech stack and whatever you're using, it just kind of comes naturally. Whereas a service business, we're going out, we're sending people to someone's home to help fix an AC unit or fix an oven, or it's a little bit different how they view technology in general. And so sometimes in those situations, to your point, when they're purchasing, they won't have the right people on those calls to begin with. And so it kind of hurts them from the beginning because they'll have people that don't know that there's people like me that exist, that literally a career can just be built out around how you would build Salesforce, how you develop the architecture. There's rules to it. There's best practices. There's releases every year, 3 major releases every year that we look at. So there's this whole ecosystem of people that are trying to help them set it up. And they're kind of viewing it as, okay, again, this burdensome thing that I got to kind of now use in the business. I don't like it. I don't want to build stuff long term. I just kind of want to fix the problem I have now. And if that stays for too long, I think it puts them in a bad position when a new leadership comes in, even if they do like Salesforce, because it just feels a little overwhelming with maybe some of the stuff they would have to change, as well as the adoption and attitudes across the business of how do we actually use this tool and accept it into the business now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Agree.
that's all point. Okay, so you're into these businesses. There's some things that you would look for. Attitude, as we established, is like a big proponent here to really how you would see whether or not this is going to be a successful thing for them or not. Now, a common problem I'll usually see inside of sales ops is, speaking of attitudes, would be like trying to get alignment specifically for like the sales team. I know sales team really tries to focus most of their time. We also want them to do that on just selling. And so it becomes kind of this song and dance a little bit of how do we get them to update stuff in there so that, to your point with forecasting as well, we can propose what's going to happen to the business. We can hire people when needed. We can know what to expect as far as what our income is going to be so we can make better decisions as a business. You obviously need the sales reps to be able to log that for you, but you also want to make sure that they're doing their job that you hired them to do, which is stay on the phones. So how do you balance those two things? I feel like that's always a really common pain point we run into when we work with sales ops. So I'd be interested to hear what your take is on that.
Yeah, that's actually something that I was thinking about earlier when I was like making some notes in preparation for this call around, some of the talking points you put forward. And I actually wrote that down, that's such a difficult balance of additional process versus getting alignment with the teams, because that is usually the number one gripe, like that I've definitely found with reps, is that I think about all the hundreds of reps, account execs that I've worked with over the years, and you get the ones that just don't want to use the tool because they're just really sort of set in their ways and they like doing things their way, and they don't want to sort of get aligned. And you sort of push them into it and they'll do the bare minimum and they'll still complain and say like, this is too much admin. Like I want to be out in the field. I'm traveling, I'm meeting customers, I'm going to partner events, and they'll do the bare minimum. I think you get the awesome reps at the other end of the scale that will go above and beyond to make sure everything's been, handled correctly in Salesforce, whether it's around like, deal progression or deal notes, like, account plans and mutual close plans, and they'll be great at that. I think one of the things that's like I see getting solved a lot now though is the amount of tools that are layering in AI to sort of take care of a lot of that for reps. Now, I haven't been lucky enough to sort of see what that looks like, on the ground, to see how accurate it is, like call transcripts. And, there's been tools like Gong over the years that have done call recordings in Clary with their Copilot module. And, but a lot of the tooling that's coming out now, where it's AI first and they're sort of rebranding themselves as a revenue operating system and not a CRM, because it's like packing in all of this sales tooling into like the one platform.
Yeah.
They're sort of doing a lot of that for the reps. So it was one of the things that, like I said, that I put down, and it's such a difficult balance this is where I get sort of conflicted, right? Because because the way I look at ops, or the way that ops has sort of been treated in the past in their position where they sit in the field, is that your customers are all internal. Like it's the exec team, it's the marketing team, it's the sales reps, it's the the sales leadership, and you're sort of servicing all those different functions, but you're still sort of doing it like you're sort of collating and collecting for the business as a whole. So there's certain things that, over the years that have been required, that things that you do need to capture or things that do need to be done.
Yeah.
And they've been pretty manual, like over the years, right? Like only
Right.
recently, like I was saying with AI. And so this is where I sort of really get torn, because I do understand, or have understood, the account exec's pain over the years of having to do a lot of this stuff manually, and try and sort of enable and educate them and saying like, we're sort of doing this for the good of the business because this is what we want to track, or this is what we want to measure, this is what we want to report on in 6 months time, and we need like a solid like 6 months data set to be able to do that, or this is what's been requested from the exec team. But the other side of it is I do get that, they need to be as efficient as possible for the business, and being efficient for them is being out, speaking to people and in front of customers and in front of prospects and pitching and, at like industry events and meeting partners and stuff. So it is a very difficult balance. And, like I say, like we'll see, like with the rise of what AI is doing at the moment, if that is capturing, intelligence and conversation intelligence and the call recordings and transcripts and, auto populating out these fields that typically you would ask a rep to do on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And that's now taking care of it. I haven't really seen anything solid yet, which, could be good or, not so good. It's an interesting one to watch, I think, for that specific question.
Yeah, I think you answered it well too. You basically have like two different things that are happening. You have the business that wants to make sure that we're having you fill stuff out because we are going to look at that data and make business decisions. So if you don't tell us, for example, something super simple on sales, if you don't tell us what their estimated revenue is per year on that account, we don't know if this is the best type of customer we should continue to go after, if we need to go up market, down market. If you don't tell us contact information, we can't follow up with these people. If you don't get the right people, decision makers, we can't get this deal through and get you paid and get the business paid. So I think it comes from a healthy place, like you're saying, which is like the business brain, like there's a reason for it. And then the other side is the sales side. I think what they see sometimes is there could be a little bit of overdoing on that business side, which is like we start just coming up with fields that maybe we're never really even going to follow up on or into reports or pull dashboards into. And so sales starts to view that as like, okay, well, now I have this page layout that is like 200 fields. And I really only need to fill out maybe 10 of those. So what's up with the other 200 on here that we're never really using? And I think that's a fair call out on their side.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So I think it's like trying to find out which ones you need and which ones you don't, so that you could take actionable data and you have it available, but you're not overburdening the sales rep to just give you information that they don't really need to go and collect for you.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think part of that actually falls on ops as well. Like it's it would be my responsibility to go back to the leadership team or the exec team to say, why do we want to capture this? What are we trying to solve for? What extra additional effort are we going to ask the field to put in, or the partner team or the marketing team to do manually or pay attention to? And it's about really understanding what you're trying to achieve, because I have been at companies over the years where I've sat around a table or I've been looped in after the fact, and they're like, we're going to add like these 20 fields, and that's the only bit of the story you get. Right. So, probably partly like I've ended up participating in some of that where I'm like, oh, okay. Like, if you say we need them, we need them. But these are like, little lessons that you learn over the years to actually put your hand up and say, well, why do we need that? Like, what are we trying to capture? What are we trying to achieve? Like, what are we trying to measure? Like, how does that actually build into the sales plan or the, what we're trying to do long term? Like, is it a forecasting accuracy issue? Is it a data capture issue around particular customer set? Or, because when you know that part of the story, that's when you can feel sort of emboldened to go to the sales team and say, listen, like, I know that this is going to require an extra like 20 minutes of your week or 30 minutes of your week. But this is the reason, the business is making a play down this particular stream, like, a product stream at the moment. That this is the type of market we're trying to hit up. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture this, blah, blah, and you can sort of get them to understand. There's one of the worst things that I've seen over the years from different, parts of sales leadership is where they do exactly that. Like you said, they'll just build in a bunch of fields and they'll just like kick it out there. And you can't get traction that way. It just doesn't. I've never seen it work. Like, and this is where these fields end up getting made redundant in the tool, like 6 months or 8 months later.
Yeah.
It's just, it happens.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And on our side, where we're in those weeds a little bit more, monitoring what's in the CRM, there's a few tools out there nowadays that you can look at where it will tell you how often those fields are populated. So it is kind of a fun exercise for everybody to see if that is the problem, because you can pull a report and then it will show us like, okay, you have whatever we said, 200 fields on the opportunity. And really the top 10, these get populated all the time. Everything else below, it just starts to dwindle in percentage. You'll have some in the less than 1%. And it's like, okay, well, clearly we do not use this field. So what was it created for? Is there something that's a duplicate now? And probably we could get rid of this thing. So
the funny thing is nobody knows either. Like you say, what?
No. Yeah.
People are like, I don't know. Like even the person that asked you to do it, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think like, again, going back to what we say with tech in specific, working there, I know, people kind of come and go. I don't know if it's been your experience, but I wouldn't say as much in maybe C-suite level, but I would definitely say below that, there's a lot of people that are trying to kind of jump jobs, make a name for themselves. It grows quickly. And so I at least would see that more of like a mid-level employee. They're there for a year or two and then they're going to leave. And so because of that same thing, I think sometimes a lot of tech debt can get created because of like, I don't know, so-and-so was here. They thought it was a good idea. We created this thing. And now they left and won't remember.
I've seen that 100 times.
Right. Well, cool. I really appreciate this conversation we've had. I think this was super helpful to kind of bring some more conversations around, sales, RM importance, how we can kind of look for some better data architecture there, better cleanup, and kind of like what people could point out. Before we end this, obviously we want to make sure that we give you a chance to tell us where we can find more of your stuff, follow you. Are you on any social that we want to go to, or places that you publish any articles that you want us to go to?
Yeah, so the only social I'm on is LinkedIn, so you can just find me by my name straight, Andy Smidmore in the global search bar. There's some content on there that I've just sort of wrapped up in the past couple of weeks. So I think it was about 14 weekly articles around my experience in go-to-market and RevOps and sales ops and all different different subject weekly. A lot of it is based on my observations and my own opinions and conversations that I've had and things that I've seen work and don't work. So hopefully people can take a look and, maybe take some nuggets from it, or, sort of sit there and think, hey, that's exactly what I had to do, or that's what I lived through. And yeah, it's quite a short read each article, but that's on my LinkedIn page under the post section.
Okay. That's perfect. That's like the exact reason why you want to publish that stuff, where it's like you looking back and then there's people that are on their journey kind of going forward. They can look at that stuff and save a bunch of time. So awesome that you publish that kind of stuff for them. We'll make sure we link that.
Try and help the younger version of myself stepping into it for the first time.
Yeah, 100%. Well, again, Andy, I appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much. We'll make sure we get all that published and look forward to speaking with you soon after this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate it. Take care.